Here with Karl Nonemaker, ABCA Division One Assistant Coach of the Year, recruiting coordinator at Auburn. I think 2017's been there, but previous stops at Old Dominion, Monmouth. You were also at Auburn before, but 4-year starter at Vandy, and then a couple years in the Phillies org. So, Karl, thanks for jumping on with me.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everything that you've been doing to spread the word on baseball and with all the outreach. We all appreciate it.
Yeah, I know assistants don't always get the recognition they probably deserve, but what do you think about the honor? I know we had a lot of good ones this year that could have got it, but
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely surprised, and I don't think coaches were thinking about when postseason stuff is voted on, and you're not thinking about that kind of stuff, and definitely it's definitely an honor and definitely a surprise. There's so many. There really are. I mean, our game is just filled with so many excellent people, baseball people. The work ethic, just you go around the competition level, midweek, weekend. So there's so many great guys and peers that are doing amazing work. And, it's definitely an honor to be considered for something like this.
I saw you in Omaha. For anybody that doesn't know the story, talk about going from Corvallis to then Omaha for you guys, because it's a wonderful story for somebody that doesn't know it.
Yeah, well, we got through with the regional, and I think Vandy was playing Oregon State, right, in that regional final, and the regional here was just it was really one of the best couple day moments that we've had. You just think about back in Auburn history since the super regional period and the 4-team regionals. Auburn has hosted a few times and won their own regional in 1999, and has had a couple chances since then to host. And first off, just in the regional, what I remember is when our players took the field for game one. We've got a parking deck in left field, which is not ticketed, but there's people tailgate up there. We have a new section that we kind of opened up behind the right center fence. Coach Butch called it Operation Atmosphere, where just anybody could come. They don't need a ticket. They can come out there and hang out. And then, the park was full, and our players got a standing ovation when they took the field on game one of the regional. So, and then, we scored a bunch of runs in the first, and Cole Foster, hit a home run from each side of the plate. It was just kind of a magical opening game, and played two good teams in Florida State and UCLA, and really just played excellent all weekend. So we were obviously hoping that we would get a chance to host, right? Just because it's such a big deal in that super regional. But we kind of went into it thinking, okay, whatever happens is supposed to happen, whether we're home or whether we're away. And if we got a chance to go on the road, we'll treat it as just a really cool experience. One of the cool things about going to Oregon that time of year is, you're used to thunderstorms and and lightning and really warm temperatures and things like that. We got out to Oregon, we packed all of our cold weather gear. It was unseasonably cool. Usually it warms up about that time of year. I think the only time it didn't rain was for, out of the 27 innings we played, it probably didn't rain for, 20 of those, but it felt like every other time during the day it was spitting rain, cool. And our guys just took it as an opportunity to go do something different. I think some of them were excited for the experience to do something different, and it was a challenge. Now, what we didn't know going into that was that Oregon State had hosted 6 super regionals and hadn't lost one. And I think it's good to not know those things. We just didn't know it until, somebody told us. We just knew it was a really proud program, and you could feel it. The interesting thing was, you think West Coast, East Coast, and, the SEC, it really felt like an SEC environment.
They have a
It
great
felt,
environment there. It's very underrated. People don't know they have a great environment at Oregon State.
if anything, it was more positive than we're used to. um, It really was. And they were positive for their team. Um, just a really, really interesting experience. Now, there were some challenges, right? Just because it was graduation, we ended up staying about 70 miles away from the field. So we drove about an hour and 20 minutes up and back the first day we got there for practice. Fortunately, our games weren't too early in the day, right? From a turnaround standpoint, I think it helped us have an evening, and even game three was like a 4 p.m. start out there. It would have been really tough to turn back around, drive an hour and a half, and have a noon game. But one of the things that we really built our season on was no excuses, and it was really amongst a few other things. One of the things that we really found an amazing performance coach and Jason Selk, and it
Love
was two
Jason
things.
Selk.
It was amazing. It
Love him.
was self-confidence is the number one key to human performance, and no excuses. And it was just kind of one of those things. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to make excuses. At the end of the day, we're either going to win or we're not, and it's going to be that simple. There's going to be no buts. And fortunately, we were able to. It didn't start out great. They scored a bunch of runs in the first, in the bottom of the first, I think it was, and it was like, oh man, you know how that feels when you go on the road, and we were able to kind of steady it and win that game. And then Cooper Jerpy was just awesome in game two, and they pitched the lights out. And then game three was just another nail biter, and a one-run game, and it took just an amazing appearance from our closer Blake Burkhalter to shut down a team that has never lost a super regional at home in the super regional era. So got done, flew back the next day. That was a Monday, I think. Got back on Tuesday evening, right? Flying back east, did our laundry, woke up the next day, flew out to Omaha, and got to see your smiling face.
Oh, tremendous! Because I saw you and I was like, "How are you doing?" Because I knew the turnaround's quick, but that goes into the no excuses piece. And obviously, you'd rather be in Omaha than on the road
Yeah.
recruiting. I mean, there's a lot worse things than having a quick turnaround to get to Omaha. And saw Tim Hudson, and I always, that's what I think about with Auburn's program, because I was at the '97 World Series, and Tim Hudson's the SEC Player of the Year, playing center field for Auburn that year. And just talk about what he kind of brought to the table for you guys too, because he has that experience at the college level and obviously at the pro level.
Yeah, I think anybody that really knows Huddy would say, the first thing is he's one of the best people you could ever meet. I mean, he really is. He's never forgot his roots. He's never forgot where he came from. As humble as anybody you could ever meet, and really did this to be a part of the team. This isn't a guy that played 17 years and hey, I'll just go and kick my feet up. I mean, he spent hours on hours of preparing for opponents to try to help our pitchers have the best plan, just like he did when he was playing. It was really neat for him that Auburn, won a game in the College World Series in 1997 when he was there. And we are not happy with how it finished this year. We did feel like we were in position. Our pitching was in a good place. Our guys hadn't thrown too many innings. We were really together. Everybody wanted to keep playing. We did not feel like we were on fumes. We won a game in the College World Series, which, for Huddy, he was a player and a coach the last two times, that had happened, which is just an amazing legacy. No student athlete, I don't think, is given more financially to the university than Tim Hudson. And then to kind of give that, just definitely an unbelievable guy to have as part of the program. And he helped our players so much with, this is what it's like in these moments, and this is how to handle them.
When you're going over teams, how much information are you sharing with guys from a scouting report standpoint?
We were doing, we wanted our team to be together this year. We wanted, coming out of COVID, it felt like, everything was separated. You couldn't have so many guys in the locker room at the same time. You couldn't have meetings. You couldn't sit close together. Everything this year was how much time can we spend together, because everything that we're trying to do is the whole synergy thing, right? I mean, it's bringing them together. So we would take about 30 minutes on Thursdays to talk about the weekend. Butch would talk for a few minutes about just two or three things that we're going to need to do or to expect from the team. And then, Huddy would talk about 4 or 5 hitters and a little bit of what they do. Gabe does a great job preparing and trying to dissect the opposing pitchers. And then he would talk about, hey, tomorrow's starter, a couple relievers, and kind of what we're going to need to do. And then each day, then we would have a short 15, 20-minute report of a few more hitters and then maybe 1 or 2 more pitchers that we might see.
How much time are you spent on positioning with those guys? Because I think that's one of the things that's changed immensely over the last 5-6 years, is maybe shifting. And I didn't pay as much attention to your guys' defensive shifts and alignment. What's kind of your theory on that piece? Because I know it has changed, and some guys are still pretty straight up on a lot of it.
Yep. So we take some of the great stuff we get, the printouts on charts and stuff. But the other thing that I like to do is go into synergy, just as maybe Huddy would prepare for the hitters and Gabe would look at the pitchers. I go and watch every hitter and just sort it, ground ball after ground ball, some fly balls, just kind of some tendencies, compare it with the charts, and really just try to get a feel for where we can put guys that give us the best probability of having the ball get hit at us. And then, there's times where we will shift, bringing the third baseman over, bringing the second baseman into right field. We've done that at times when it's almost like you want to attack, right? You want to do what you think is going to do. You don't want to be, as a coach, sitting there thinking we need to do this and not do it because you're scared of it, for the small percentage chance that you could lose. Now, one thing where we differ a little bit is with runners on base, bag coverage is definitely going to be more of a priority. And we're less apt to move so much with runners on base just because things can get really screwy if you get guys too far out of the way there.
I just saw Coach Baird had a birthday also, so I wanted to give Coach Baird, ABCA Hall of Famer, a shout out. Wonderful man, and obviously he's meant a lot to the program at Auburn as well.
Yeah, he you want to talk about deserving, right? We're so fired up when he was inducted into that Hall of Fame, and he's one of those guys that's never talked about himself. He's never been a self-promoter. It's never been about him. One of the smartest people you ever met. One of the best vocabularies. I mean, you probably got it. He'll throw some words.
Him and Wayne Graham, those have been the guys the last 3 years, kind of my idols, were guys that you talk to and you're like, guy, he's still really sharp and smart, and it's all still there. Like, those two guys were the two guys where I'm like, man, it's all still there from them. They're sharp.
Yeah, and he cares so much. He wants, he spends some time of the year in Virginia, some time of the year in Alabama, and he'll come out to practice, watch some scrimmages. He usually comes a little bit more. He never really walks on the field. He sits in the stands, and when there's a couple guys pitching that he wants to take a look at, right? He loves to come out, and he might sit up there for 30 minutes, but he has been an awesome resource for us. And I know he and Butch talk at least every week during the season, but
how gratifying is it for you guys knowing that you don't have some of the same scholarship help that some of the other programs have? So how gratifying is that for you guys? You're at elite level and don't have some of the same advantages as some of the other programs. Yeah,
I mean, we just have to be really, really good with the resources that we have. And I think, at this level, you have to do everything, right? You have to recruit well, coach well, impact, the kids well. So there's so much competition out there that you are going to be challenged and you are going to be stretched. And that's part of that's part of what makes it gratifying, right? Because you're going into the toughest environments and playing against the best players and some of the best coaches, and every weekend. It's not just the final. You start thinking too far down the road, and you start thinking, hey, what's next month? Man, it doesn't matter who you playing each week. You better play well. You can play well and get beat.
Yep.
If you don't play well, you're probably going to get beat. And so it's gratifying to be able to go into some of those environments and try to accomplish things.
Yeah. Well, and the numbers prove out how many SEC teams get to Omaha and just how tough your guys' league is. And I mean, how much of an advantage is that going into postseason? You played four of the teams in the Omaha field were on your guys' schedule this year.
Yeah, I think what it is you are in some really, really loud, intense environments, and you are facing in the league as good as anything else you'll face. So it doesn't get ramped up. Now, you might face arms that are just as good. You might go into an environment that's just as good, but you're never going to go into an environment that's tougher or with more people or anything like that at the current setup that we have. So it's one of those things where guys are used to not being able to hear each other. Our communication on the field is different here than it is at some other places I've been, because you have to talk a certain way when you're on the road and 8,000 people are screaming when a ball's hitting the gap. That shortstop's not going to hear the catcher or the third baseman when he's out there in tandem, right? It's just everything we do all year is kind of set up to that.
Do your guys have to look behind a little bit more there? Say your tandem guys are going out. They're probably going to have to look behind a little bit more if they need to check to see where third or home's at, correct?
The back guy calls the back guy in the tandem makes the call. Yep. And I mean, that might be pretty common for some places, but some places, hey, if there's nobody on, the third baseman's making the call. Yep. But if there's a ball in a right center gap with nobody on, the second baseman's out, the shortstop's making the call. Just because the second baseman won't be able to hear the third baseman, right? So we're just set up a little bit more for that, for what we have to deal with. And I don't think it's like, oh, this is better than that. It's just, it doesn't get tougher. And so there's a little bit of confidence that's come from, I mean, you think about it. We think about this all the time. I mean, we went 16-13 in the league this year. And you wonder why coaches don't have any hair or anything like that. I mean, 4 fewer wins and we don't make a regional. But 16-13 had us hosting, with the RPI and everything. And so it's a pretty slim margin. And, step one when you start the year isn't, hey, we want to go to Omaha. That's telescope, right? Like the microscope is, we've got to get better every day. The score is going to take care of itself. And we've got to become a better team. And we've got to be a team that has some aspects to it that are bulletproof, because we're going to have some bullets getting fired at us throughout the year. So a lot of teams are we just got to survive and get through and put ourselves in a position, right, to accomplish all the goals that we start the year with.
Those weekends are rough. Do you guys adjust recovery at all as the season goes? Because like I said, you go to an Arkansas, or you go to these places, you're going to get screamed at for 3 straight days. It does take a lot more out of you mentally and physically. Do you guys adjust your recovery at all throughout the season?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, the more that games go up, the recovery has to increase at times. We've gotten into a pretty good rhythm during the year where it changes a little bit with the Thursday, Friday, Saturday series, but with a normal 4-game week, we'll normally play on Tuesdays, and then Wednesday's our off day during the year.
I adjusted that at Western because I just felt like Monday they needed to still kind of get moving a little bit, and then Wednesday just seemed like the best day to take off.
Yeah, and the goal for us is to never have an off day before a game.
Yes.
So if we play on Tuesday, Monday's usually a split practice. It's Obviously, pitchers are doing whatever they're doing, right? Because you got relievers, starters, all that stuff. From a position player standpoint, it's generally no throw day. And then, just it's usually any recovery stuff that they got to do in the weight room. Usually there's like a 45-minute lift or, CJ, our strength coach, Chris Joyner, spent 8 years as a major league strength coach and just has been in it and is super with that, understanding when they need to get after it a little bit and when they need a little bit less. And then we'll usually do like a hitting rotation and stuff like that, kind of getting them set for the next week, getting them set for the next game. And then Wednesdays be off, which a lot of times we got guys that don't even come to the field, and it's okay. Like,
Yes.
We can't make them, and we don't. There's a lot of times we don't swing.
Yes.
Take a day
Get
off
away from it.
When you think about it, you've got Thursday practice, so you probably early work on Thursday, then Thursday practice. But then if you're truly working in pregame, before the game on Friday is also a practice,
Yes.
right? It's a 40-minute practice and then a 10-minute in and out. So you got 50 minutes to practice. You really, if you're working on game day in those 50 minutes, you got 2 practices to get ready to play. So take that Wednesday off.
And from a cognitive brain development standpoint, those markers get set during activity, but they don't really get set until there's rest and recovery. So that's why you'll see some players that take a little bit of time off and come back just as good or better because it allows those markers to get set cognitively. So there is some science background and basis to all of that of rest and recovery, which I think the industry as a whole has gotten much better as adding the rest and recovery piece in. But that's a learning piece. Your brain's gonna set all those markers, and it's gonna stick more when you allow them to get that rest and recovery piece in.
Yeah, I mean, it's just balance, right?
Yep.
It's one of the things that we have kind of talked about is like, hey, when it's time to go, we're going.
Yep.
I think sometimes in coaching, there's times where you want your players to be really tired, and we actually talk about it. We don't do tired, so we don't talk about tired. We don't talk about cold. We don't talk about. We're just not going to do it, because at the end of the day, right, the biggest games you're going to play in the whole year, you're not going to feel completely fresh, right? You're going to have just gotten off a plane. All these, when you visualize the end of the year and you visualize a super regional or Omaha or the SEC tournament, whatever, you're going to be a little nicked up. We're not going to talk about it. And so, what else? It's going to be 100 degrees or it's going to be 50 degrees. In 2018, it was noon starts in the super regional at Florida. So the whole like 7 p.m., 75 degrees, partly cloudy, feel great. That's not reality, right? So, balance, trying to create some balance so guys can stay fresh, trying to create some balance and understanding that we're not going to feel perfect, but we can do some things to manage it, to put ourselves in the best position we got to be really ready to go 4 days a week in college baseball, right? It doesn't matter if we're awesome on Thursday and we're not sharp on Friday, right? It's there's a little bit of a cycle in college, which is really cool.
The SEC tournament, I mean, it's lengthy, but does it help to play one game? I mean, if you're in already, does it help to play one game and then go home and rest up a little bit? Does it help or does it matter? I mean, if you play to the last day in the SEC tournament, you've played a lot of games.
There's some teams that have been able to do it.
Yeah.
We talked this year and we fell short. When we got into striking distance, that bye, those top 4 seeds get a bye. So if you're in that scenario, I think you're just 3 wins away.
Yep.
If you can get the bye. And then if you play on Wednesday, last weekend of the year is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So if you play on Wednesday, we're used to bringing guys back on 5 days rest, right? We go from Friday to Thursday to Friday. They go 5 days back to 6 days, back to 5 days. And hey, in Major League Baseball, it's going to be 4 days to sometimes 5 days. But if you get the bye, you have the full rest. So you're throwing back to your weekend rotation probably. Your bullpen's a little bit more set up and everything like that. And so that's the goal. When you look at the history, I haven't looked at like how many, but I would think that a pretty good percentage, right? there's 4 teams with a bye and 8 teams that don't get a bye. I would think one of those 4 teams win it more often than the other 8.
Give Greg Dry some love. Is he the unheralded hero of the Auburn program? I don't think that many people know Greg. I mean, they do in the SEC circle, but I think outside the SEC circle, I don't think many people know about Greg.
Yeah, for those that don't know Greg Dry, tell him he's going to be like a legend, years and years from now when he's, long gone or whatever. And people are going to be talking about him like this larger than life legend. And he's just that guy that would give you the shirt off his back. Yeah. He'll do everything. He'll be setting up travel, doing something with a budget. Then he'll be, up on a ladder, fixing something, fixing an L screen. This morning, who do you go to? I walked in. I said, "Hey, Greg, I went up to to our press box, and man, it's the sun's coming in on the press box this time of day. I normally would do this podcast up there. Hey, can you help me?" So he stops what he's doing. He gets up. He walks me across the street. Right, gets me in, gives me his card, and that's just Greg. I mean, he'll do anything for anybody. And he's been in this league so long, worked for Ron Polk, worked for John Cohen. He really, really knows what a player looks like. So a lot of times, as a guy that's focused a lot on the recruiting, you're always trying to evaluate like your current team. I find myself going to Greg all the time, being like, is that guy going to be okay? And I'll give you an example. With Joseph Gonzalez got touched up a little bit. His freshman year, like a lot of guys do, right? Butch always says, you'll see really good arms choking on a 5 ERA their freshman year, backing up a lot of bases in the SEC. And will they make that next step, right? And hey, Greg, is Joseph going to be all right? And he's going to be fine. Don't worry about Joseph. Joseph's going to be fine. And it's just he's seen so many players, right? Yep. For how many years he's been around such good teams. He's sneaky good at really being able to evaluate what an SEC player looks like.
And Butch is a phenomenal head coach, but how nice is that? Your head coach is kind of doing the pitching a little bit. Does that give you a little bit more autonomy, with the offensive and the infield piece when your head coach runs more of the pitching?
Yeah, and I think Butch has, as a leader, Butch is really like a facilitator. He's really good at managing. He's obviously, everybody knows he's a great person. He cares about the people that are with him, which is one of the single most important traits, right? Anybody could have as a coach or leader. Do you truly care and do you want to help? But he's the facilitator, and he wants to see the other people, his coaches, do the work and get that satisfaction. And he's always there to support, back us up. And everything like that. So our staff is structured to where we have two assistants, that not the volunteer, the 2 other assistants are position player guys. So Gabe Gross, our staff set up where one of them is going to focus on the recruiting and one of them is going to be basically the offensive coordinator. So Gabe is basically running the offense and mostly there every day, because that guy that's working with the hitting needs to be there more than maybe a guy that's focused on defense. And then I help Gabe with all that. And we kind of tag team whatever's going on the field. And then focus for me is, on the defensive side. And then Butch he'll really float. He's created a scenario where he can float. But yeah, more active with the pitching just because that was his true love, and has such amazing
his sharp
insight
pitching
to give
too.
guys.
He's when I think about Butch, I think about a guy who's been able to maximize wherever he's been able to maximize the pitching staff, and no matter what challenges the schools that he's been at, he's been able to maximize their pitching staff to be able to get outs.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's common with coaches, right, is the best coaches are a lot of times they're problem solvers, right? And, there's challenges ahead of us. How do we, and one of the things that's really interesting that Butch has done is he's big on just a couple things. And just like any good coach, find your identity, right? Find your identity as a person and as a pitcher. And then figuring out who you are and what you do well I think it takes a lot of the focus on strengths and away from weaknesses. So many times, hey, your breaking ball is not that good, so we got to work on it all the time. Well, hey, your fastball changeup is elite,
Yes.
so let's figure out how to win with that, and then slowly develop the other things. So there's a few things that he has figured out through hours and hours and hours, that are really on to something. You know, our catchers call the game and our pitchers can shake anytime. They need to do their scout and report research. And, you know, right there, it's just an accountability piece, right? It's not the coach's pitch. It's not saying it's bad if the coach calls the pitch, but there's just some things that he's figured out that work for him.
Yeah.
And it's been over a lot of hours.
Did you give yourself much of a breather when you guys were done, or did you have to hit it right away to get back on the road?
So, you know, it's funny. You see some coaches out, you know, that July 4th dead period. Maybe, I don't know, maybe wouldn't have voted for it when it
We
came
added
up.
that in for you guys, honestly.
And now everybody's like, whew, you know? So when we got back, June, whatever, 20, I don't know, 25th or whatever it was. I don't know what date it was because it runs together. You've got that light sitting there at the end of that tunnel. So we got back. Butch did postseason meetings pretty quick. Those first things, you know, just kind of did some on the plane coming back, just touching base with guys real quick. And he does a few different ones like that. And once we got situated and there was something real to go to, good to go to, right? It's not just about going to go. We got out and said, all right, let's just go till that weekend.
Yep.
Knowing that you've got a break coming there where you can kind of catch your breath. Doesn't make any sense to take a few days off, catch your breath, and then go out for a day or two and then have another dead period. So that dead period was kind of how we scheduled everything we did to start the summer, and we appreciated it. It was like I think that was the first weekend that we had to ourselves since New Year's.
Yeah.
So we enjoyed it.
How long did it help you to take you to develop that piece where I think as a young recruiter, you're like, okay, I got to be at everything. And then as you get some experience with it, you're like, okay, I don't have to go to everything. I just got to go to the right things.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the really good coaches that was here, Doug Sisson, who's now with the White Sox, just an amazing baseball guy. He always said that players need to learn how to work before they learn what to work on. And I think it's natural. Like sometimes as you're learning how to work, you don't want to be lazy. You want to sacrifice and go the extra mile to do the work because you understand that hard work is a lot of the one of the main ingredients to having success at something. And then so it's natural as you're younger to work hard because you're trying to establish a work ethic. And when I don't say work hard, I say probably work too hard. And then you realize, hey, man, I just did that weekend. And, you know, these two aspects of that whole trip were a waste of time. But man, this aspect was really, you know, really paid dividends. And you just start to have experiences where you probably didn't make the most of your time. And then on other times when you did, you know, for example, it's like, you know, you go on the road and there's games from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9 at night. There's probably never a day where I don't take the least valuable time slot off, right? Just man, what did we see? You know, we're not writing a scout blog. We're trying to recruit players for our program. So you can go watch players all summer. And if you don't talk to them, you know, you're really missing the point. So through some trial and error, have figured out. And then with COVID, we had to learn how to recruit totally different.
Yep.
And I would say the biggest thing that's really changed with that is you had to look at, hey, you know, two questions, you know, who really knows what they're talking about? Travel coach, high school coach, junior college coach, whatever, advisor. And then the other question would be, do they really care about us? And if the answer was like, yeah, they really know what they're talking about and they really care about us, you know, we're going to have to trust them.
Yep.
And so that has become, in getting a little bit of years or rings around the tree, so to speak, that has become something we're using your network has become more of a process rather than going out and trying to find everything without any help.
Hey, those 12, 14-hour days, how are you mixing in your meals? And I think people this is always interesting to me because you have to try to sustain for a long period of time. How are you planning out? Are you doing meal prep? Are you doing anything? Or are you just kind of going as you can?
Yeah. When they're on the road, we just pretty much, I usually don't eat breakfast like first thing in the morning. It works best for me so I'll I'll go to the grocery store and get like, maybe I'll bring one or two things from home just that I can put in the refrigerator, whether it's some hard-boiled eggs or just something that, my wife and I eat for breakfast a good bit that travels well. Um, I might bring for just a couple days with me, something like that, and then put them in the car in a Ziploc bag and might get like a protein shake at the store the night before or bring a few of them. And then, usually I'm at the game when I eat for the first time in the morning. I'm kind of like on 9 to 7 guy, just from like the 14-hour, 10-hour
Yep.
fast.
Yep.
So, I'll eat something after 9, and then I know it's expensive, but I like the hot bar at Whole Foods.
I do too.
And so if
I
I'm
do
ever
too.
going by somewhere where I can get that, obviously the Chipotle's are great, Zoe's Kitchen, places where you can order at the counter, not have to get seated too much and just get something good. The thing I love about the Whole Foods is you can get whatever you want, sit down. It's like a 15-minute process.
Yep.
And then once I get done eating, I go back in and like, okay, all right, so now it's whatever time it is because it
Yep.
varies. All right, now I've got, all right, what do I have the rest of the day? Okay, what am I going to need? Okay, get another bottle of water, get another couple protein bars or whatever like
Yep.
that. And so it's kind of two birds with one stone. And usually there's a Starbucks right next to the Whole Foods somewhere. If not, you can get some. So it's like, all right, so I need
Yes.
water, caffeine,
Yep.
and some food for the rest of the day.
Yes.
But
Are you
try to
still
find
working
that
out?
break.
You still working out too when you're on the road? Or you try to mix workouts in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just depends. Like, for example, some of these fall things, like if you go down to Fort Myers or something, I mean, we might land at noon
Okay.
on Friday and have a 6 p.m. flight out on Sunday. That's more just like a bender kind of,
Yeah.
when it's 2 days. Over the course of 7 days, 100%. Some of those
Yeah.
time slots might be, hey, there's 3 hours between games, head back, go to the hotel, work out. Maybe there's a 9 o'clock game that night. Take another shower, get some food, and go do it again. It's like
The second shower
half.
is key. The second shower, it just rejuvenates you for whatever reason. Like it does, it kind of resets it for you. And I don't know if it's
Yeah,
your body thinks, okay, well, I'm waking up again and I'm getting another shower. I always found the second shower valuable.
I like having the home base like close. Like for example, like here in Auburn, fortunately, we live in a college town with great neighborhoods close. It's a good area. You don't have to avoid certain things, but by the way the crow flies, will probably live 2.5, 3 miles, from the field. It's a 10, 11 minute drive, probably back and forth. I love being able to go home for lunch. It takes just as much time to go downtown
Yep.
and sit somewhere than it does just to go home, eat leftovers. Sometimes you bring the leftovers, but if you go home, you can make those couple recruiting calls or some calls you need anyway, so you still get it done. On the road, it's the same thing. It's underrated how important like proximity to the locations is with your hotel. Doesn't need to be a minute away, but if you can kind of position yourself in the middle of where you're going to be, you're going to cross it a little bit more
Yep.
and create that opportunity. The thought of staying 45 minutes away from where everything is for me doesn't work because I like to have that flexibility to get back. Or sometimes it might be, hey, get back because there's a rain delay
Yes.
and sit down, open up a notebook and actually go to work,
Yep.
in your room at your computer.
You guys fielded 981, and it's been steady for you guys since you've been there. With your new guys coming in, what are you trying to get accomplished with those guys now that they're on campus?
I would say, so we're second week of skill work right now, right? First week we did open field. Last week we started skill work. And the first thing that we'll talk about is the best defensive teams in the country are going to be teams that throw the ball the best. Okay. And we'll talk just a ton about, it's interesting. I was at a speaking at a little coaches clinic, and Sean Stifler, the new coach at Notre Dame, was there when he was at VCU, and he used the term pass the ball. And I never thought about it before, but totally stole that, just thinking like, hey, our job as a defender is not to throw the ball at our teammate. It's to pass the ball to our teammate. And I think for some people, for me, it resonated at 40 years old, right? So we're trying to teach our players to pass the ball and understanding the different types of passes that they might need to make, to have a success. And then we try to incorporate some of those throws into the throwing program. So, I don't think you're going to throw the ball great if you tell everybody you want to throw the ball great, and then you say, okay, go throw on your own day one so that we can use our 20 minutes of defense to get into this. What you're really telling them is that throwing the ball is important, but it's not important enough for us to focus on day one.
Yes.
And so we start every day with, like I just know positionally, Gabe works with the outfielders, Butch works with the catchers. I work with the infielders. We start everything with our throwing program, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's not militaristic. It's like, hey, I don't care if you take 2 or 5 or 7 throws. We're going to do these 4 or 5 things as we do our throwing program, and then where we're going to aim and what the receiver is going to do, but not to a point of militaristic and taking freedom out. Just, it's really important that we throw the ball well.
How far are they going? Is it preference? Do you want them going out? Do they go out every day?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would call this like a hybrid phase right now, because we're not throwing the bases every day. We threw the bases yesterday for the first time. Catchers have been throwing the bases a little bit quicker, not so much just touching it. And as infielders, we threw the bases yesterday. So it's like, on that day, you're just going to do like our pre-practice throwing, and you're not going to go that far because you're not going to use all your bullets in warm-ups, because you're going to make a bunch of throws. And a catcher, you're going to look, normally outfielders are going to throw more in their long toss phase because they're going to make fewer throws in practice. Now, if it's a day where you're doing a bunch of tandems or a machine game, they need to adjust. But if it's a normal day, they can use more bullets in their throwing program to keep their arm strong. So right now, if we're throwing the bases, it's, hey, do the few segments that we do. You're welcome. Once we get to 120, every day, once they get to 120, they can go back to 250, or they can stop at 120, and it's totally up to them. And it's totally up and out, kind of more Jaeger stuff.
So they're okay to elevate. They're okay to elevate
as much as they want. Once at 120, do whatever you want. And we're actually not even going to focus on your form. If you want to hop on your back foot or anything like that, and it's
I was the exact same way.
Now, so we're still, hey, when we play catch, when we played catch the day after we throw the bases, well, all right, we're not going to throw the bases that day. We're going to throw later in the week. So, hey, you might want to go up and out a little bit more. And then we might want to take, a day off. So we're thinking about output and having, what does our output day look like? And then, are we giving them enough rest? But then when practice gets going, and we're normally out there 5 days a week, we don't throw 6 days a week. I guess if we had 5 games, we wouldn't throw. Our thought is this, like, let's just say you got Tuesday, Wednesday games of the week, and we can slow the throwing down. I guess we might throw just a little bit on Thursday just for some team D, but we're going to do our best to have 2 days that are really, really light, because you've got pregame batting practice the next day to kind of lock back in. And in my experience, guys make errors when their arm hurts.
For sure.
So, trying to manage that is a big piece of trying to be good at throwing the ball.
In and out. You say you got 5 games in a week. You going to take in and out before all 5 games?
Yeah, we've gotten into a rhythm where it's Tuesday, right? Because we don't throw on Monday. So we're fresh. So we go pregame BP, we make our throws to bases, we take in and out. And now remember, Tuesday's sandwiched between our 2 no throw days of the week. We don't throw Mondays, and then Wednesday's going to be off. So it's like, this is going to be a real output day. We're going to take a full in and out. We're going to really, really, really work on Tuesday, because, we've got, and then Fridays. And I think Fridays, obviously, I mean, we've practiced Thursday. A lot of times we'll do just some tandems and stuff on Thursday, some of those team D stuff. But on Fridays we'll take in and out. And I know some people that take it right when they get to the park and then they take batting practice and stuff. We're still a little bit traditional. We've kicked that around. There's days where we do it, but I think part of the reason why we do that is because really it's just getting in the environment. I mean, these kids are, 18 to 22, especially when you're on the road, just feeling the energy in the stadium. It's great for players that aren't in a lineup. Some of your guys that you're trying to develop just to have to make a play with, when we take in and out, there's 1,500 people in the park, an hour before the game. And so some of that stuff is really good. And I think our guys get used to it. Then
I didn't want a longer shutdown time for guys either. I didn't want them shutting down for that long if we're going to take it really early and then go play late. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Somebody can check my think. Anybody listening in, if my thinking's wrong on that, check me on that. I just didn't like the longer shutdown for the position players on that.
Yeah, some really good coaches don't like, it's as long as you got a reason. Like, that's an amazing reason to have. And the coach that's going to argue with you, his reason is going to be, I don't want him warming up 3 times, only want him warming up twice.
Yeah.
And that's a great reason too.
Yeah.
Over the course of a long season, we're going to warm up before we take BP. We're going to take in and out, and then we're only going to go out and play catch for the game. And I think that's why coaches do it, for the cumulative effect on that. So
and that's a pro ball mentality too. I mean, that's what you see at the pro level.
And that's why, and they play so much that they kind of have to think about it. And then on Saturday, we'll sometimes take a little bit of a shorter round, and it's just dependent on how, usually we'll start taking Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and then we won't take it Sunday. But what we'll do on Sundays, one of the things guys get in and out that they don't usually get in pregame BP is double plays. So on Sunday, during our ground balls, our infielders will turn 3 or 4 double plays. So it's like they're getting really the one piece that they'd be missing in and out.
Have you added much new stuff here recently? I mean, I know there's some new stuff. Have you added much new stuff in infield wise?
Yeah, no, not a lot. And some of it was just,
well, your numbers prove out. I mean, what you're doing is working.
I was an outfielder, and my whole life of coaching, started out coaching outfielders and mostly being a hitting guy. One of the things that's been cool about this experience is it's been different. A couple of years worked with the catchers, a couple of years coached high school, got to work with everything. And then when it came here, I was going to coach the outfielders, and Doug Sisson was going to coach the infielders. And when he went, Gabe was coach the outfielders, and we moved me. But was just really fortunate that at Old Dominion, Chris Finwood is just an amazing infield guy, amazing. And I never wanted to be like a hitting guy or just try to learn as much about baseball. So in seeing kind of what he did for 6 years, and then starting to, try to learn a little bit from a few other guys that played with and stuff, we only have so much time. So we really can't go down crazy rabbit holes. So we spend a lot of time on just some physical stuff, the jump rope, the ladder, stuff like that. And then fundamentals, we try to keep it really simple, and not dive too deep down rabbit holes, and try to create freedom and athleticism. And then I would say one of the things that we do that I like the most is, if you think about a player, you think about, like, there's a physical aspect, there's the fundamental aspect, and then there's the mental aspect. And so we don't just do drills, we do like situational stuff, with certain runners in certain situations, certain game situations. Instead of it being in a team practice and wasting everybody else's time, a lot of times we'll just do it with that unit on decision making and different situations where we can kind of prepare for a situation before it comes up. And so definitely open to adjusting and adding some things. But, I was listening to your talk with Matt Swope, and, he was talking about silos that he could go down, and it's just, the cost might be confusing the player more. And so trying to keep it simple for the player is still at the forefront of the decisions.
Yeah. Do you try to make adjustments with guys before they show up on campus? I mean, if you see something with one of your incoming guys, do you try to make an adjustment before they show up?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think from a hitting standpoint, we encourage guys, just not make an adjustment, but encourage guys like, hey, we're not going to ask you to hit the ball in the air all the time. We're not going to ask you, like, because the world might tell them that something else is going to be expected of them.
Yes.
So I don't think it's as much adjustments as it is.
It's education.
Here's kind of what's going to be expected of you, and here's what we're going to value. Hey, a lot of times guys say, can you give us a workout plan? And we could talk about it, but, we might guide them on, man, if you can move well, if you get your feet better, if you can just work on those things, we'll have a lot of time to kind of dig down on that. So we are not coaching our players. We're trying to just guide them. So the ones that really want to spend time at it can have it bear fruit.
Anything you've gotten rid of over the years, like that you did early on, and you're like, well, that's not working.
No, I don't think getting rid of, but I think probably add. We had a play. We were at Mississippi State a few, 4 years ago, and Jordan Westberg was leading off the game, and he could really run, and he chopped the ball to short, and he just could outrun the ball, and we stayed back on it just a little bit, and it was just bang bang, and he barely beat it, and at that point in time, I was like, okay, this is my fault, right? Like anytime something kind of comes up that. So anyway, then at that point in time, Tucker Frawley had an awesome tweet that was about the percentage of balls that a player has to come in on.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, there's so many plays that are broken plays. Not just for outfielders, for infielders. Everything's not a setup play. Everything's not. And so, I think from that time forward, we really just said, hey, we're just going to play on the move. We're going to work on coming through balls every single day. And just trying to add something, it's like beginning with the end in mind, like if we're going to have to do this in the game, we need to do it more in practice. So that was probably a failure as a coach that shed some light, where now the first balls that a guy might take every day will be just a couple play through balls, whether he throws them off his right foot or whether he braces and shuffles just like that, to try to prepare for maybe what might come during the game.
That was Pete Hughes when he was at Virginia Tech. We played Virginia Tech when I was at Iowa, and they were getting ready to go out for BP, and that was the first thing they did. They did run-throughs and trying to flip a ball with their glove into a bucket. Like, that was and that made sense to me, and I hadn't seen it before, and I was like, okay, we need to start doing that because it forces guys to get moving and being aggressive on the ball.
Yeah, it's like one of the interesting things in coaching is like when we set our practices up, if we set our practices up, right, like just for practice, and we don't set them up to serve the performance in the game, we can get good at like doing like a perfect analogy would
good
be
at
a hitting
the drill.
Coach.
Get good at the
a hitting
drill.
Coach that's always working on the swing, which would be the fundamental aspect of whatever. But on Friday, we're going to have to like take the fastball at our belly button, right, and push a fastball down. So if we don't let them see a fastball at their belly button and then one that is where they're supposed to hit to kind of give them visual work, we kind of miss, because what are we going to have to execute in the game? So I think it's easier to think that way of like, I think a lot of coaches do, right? Just what do we want to be able to do in the game? And then how do we prescribe something that will help us do what we want to do in the game better? And that has helped, to kind of plan.
I just think you guys, the offensive numbers are up. I think all of you guys have done a better job of training for what they're going to see in games with swing decisions, challenging guys in practice. I think you guys have all done a tremendous job of preparing hitters to go compete in games rather than working on their swing.
Man, it's awesome to see. Just,
I love it.
I mean, the sliders are really good. You know, the fastballs are good. Got, you know, and I think part of it too is, you know, 15 years ago, 17, 18 years ago, there weren't as many pitchers turning down 700, 800, $900,000, whatever the number is to go to college, right? So you didn't always see that big prospect with the big stuff. You know, you saw great arms. Don't get me wrong. You saw first rounders, but guys that really blossom and stuff in college. So there's got to be different ways, and the hitting coaches are doing a great job, and the machines help with that, and seeing breaking balls help with that, and good facilities help by
Multiple
having a cage
machines. You're
where
seeing a lot of multiple machine stuff now, which adds in swing decision. Like you're seeing guys get really creative with the machines out there, which is awesome.
yeah, I mean, win reality stuff, you know,
Yep.
just all those kinds of things where you can do it, and um, then playing a lot, you know, and you know, some guys aren't out throwing as much in the summer to where you're not shutting quite as many guys down in the fall, so you can play more. And then, you know, the best way to get better at playing the game is to play the game. And so I think just, you know, guys getting more bats and figuring that out has helped. You know, they're just not doing drills all day, getting 20 at bats in the fall and then having to go out there and play a season. They're getting 50, 60 at bats in the fall and being able to fail some and learn some and then figure out, okay, based off of this, what do we need to prescribe for these players to, you know, and so much to your point is I mean, it's pitch selection, it's swing decisions, it's all those things that isn't just the swing.
Hey, how stringent are you on prep steps? Like pre-pitch prep steps for your infielders?
We talk about it like, you know, day one. But, you know, corner guys probably got to be a little lower. Middle guys can be taller. Middle guys have a little bit more flexibility with kind of how they do it. You know, we prefer the tennis hop, and we prefer to try to land as, you know, it's interesting. Like some people might say a split second after, you know, one of my good friends, college teammates, Matt Cada, played some time in the big leagues, and he was one that talked about, hey, you might want to land just a split second after the ball gets hit, like a split second, because then, you know, you kind of land. And so we talk about it, but as long as they're landing as the ball's in a hitting zone, even if it's a split second after, it feels like they can move either way. And then the other thing, which nobody really talks about, I don't know, just something that kind of, if you're a right-handed thrower, right? So if you're playing third, short, or second, you know, some guys will go left, right to kind of get ready,
I did left
and it
right because
and it's kind of backwards. Yeah,
my left hand is my dominant hand, and I played soccer a lot growing up, and my left foot was my dominant hand. So I stepped in with my left, even though I would never teach it that way because you want it to be
yeah,
consistent with right left, right left, right left. You know, with
yeah.
right left field, right left throw. But as I'm going through it, I'm like, well, I didn't do that. Like I stepped in with my
Yeah.
left because it was my dominant foot.
We try to talk about that. Just, hey, just so you know, this might help you to be in sync more. And it's just, for example, like we were doing it the other day, we're doing bunting, right? And hey, if we sack, our front foot's we're just gonna step with our front foot, let our back foot reset. And if we're dragging or pushing, we're probably gonna start with our back foot.
Yeah.
However, Mikey Bello, you're you know, going back foot, front foot first. You know, just because throughout a course of a year,
Yes.
some guys just they perform better doing it the other way. So
Yes.
it's almost like, hey, we have to have a plan of teaching, right? So, hey, this is going to be the starting point,
Yes.
but this is not going to be a dictatorship, and this is not going to be that you have to do it. So this is our suggestion, and let's see if the suggestion works. But if through trial and error, maybe you do something a little bit better another way, then let's all understand that we're just trying to
If you get the end result, it
succeed.
doesn't matter. If you
Exactly.
get the end result, it does not matter how you get the end result. Like if you're getting the end
Yeah, and I
result
think if you
consistently and
suggest
you're having success, it doesn't matter.
something, I think it helps the end result come quicker rather than just saying, hey, just do what you feel, like do whatever feels best, is kind of like sending somebody out in the wilderness a little bit without a compass. Hey, we're going to go out and this is going to be the first route that we're going to take. And if we don't like this, or this route that we'll just choose a different one. Right. And so just try to suggest, and then that kind of creates, hey, I think I like it better when I do it this way. Okay, cool. Now it's your game. You've got some ownership in it. You've got a reason behind it. And, there's different kinds of coaches, right? There's some that's like, you got to do it this way. I think we want our players to be a part of it because we want accountability and we want to respect that they want to be the best that they can be. And I think if they're on the same page with it, we're going to have a much better chance of preparing them to, go on and be on their own.
You said arms weren't good in college, but by the way, wasn't Mark Pryor a teammate of yours at Vanderbilt?
Well, arms were good. There just wasn't as many. Mark was.
We saw him,
freshman.
Evansville. Yeah. He pitched against us midweek, and I was a volunteer at the time. I hadn't been on the road, so I don't know anybody. And he goes his first warm-up pitch. My brother goes, "Hey, this kid's really good." He goes, "He turned down a lot of money to come to Vanderbilt."
he was. He was. Man, what a talent. And then, right after that, Jeremy Sowers,
yep.
Because Mark, that was a time in the
Vandy had good players back then. Coach Mewburn did a good job. I know Coach Corbin's done a great job, but Vandy always had sneaky good players. We played Vandy midweek every year at Evansville. We do home and home with them every other year. You'd play Tuesday, Wednesday, so we saw Vandy every year. Glenn Davis and I were teammates in the Cape. They had some good players back then. Titus Meadows. You can go down the laundry list of guys that played for Vandy back there with Coach Mewburn that were good players and good arms.
Yeah. We just, it was a depth thing, right? Private school stuff. That's one of the things they really figured out, and, how to get as many good players as you possibly can. Joey Blanton, Brian Tallett, those were some guys that, you remember Paul Mahome. There was really, really good arms. There was just more like Kip Booknight, Charlie Isaacson. There was more of the pitchable guy. Yeah. And you don't see that anymore. Like my first time facing Booknight at South Carolina in 1999. I mean, can you do worse than striking out twice and bouncing back to the pitcher twice? I was literally I think, talking to my dad after the game, and, he's down there, and I was like, I think I hit the ball like a total of 100 feet today. Yes. In 4 at bats, and that guy was so tough to deal with. And that was one of the things that made it challenging. Auburn, like Brent Shaning, or, he was a 5th round pick, but just guys that could really, really, really pitch. There's guys that can really pitch today, but
Seth Etherton, that changeup is still gonna give me nightmares. He just got named. He's at USC now, and every time I see his name, I'm like, that guy made me. That's why I realized that I wasn't going to be a big league hitter when he struck me out 3 times on 9 straight changeups. I just knew it.
I think we can all agree, there was definitely good arms. I remember, Dan Wright throwing 98 miles an hour for Arkansas, and there was first rounders and stuff that just. I think the one thing that has changed is, that 3rd or 4th round pick is going to school many times now instead of signing. And so you're just probably the average velo is just a little bit better at a younger age. And we all know that. Yeah. But that's the one thing that, when in doubt, you're probably going to see something firm, and it's not going to be a changeup guy probably on the weekends. And that's why when you do see one, they can be so tough to deal with because people aren't
you haven't seen it in a while.
The same as they used to. Yes, yeah. They're different now.
Yeah. Yep. What do you wish somebody would have told you before you got into coaching?
It's interesting. Like when I got into coaching, I'm not going to answer your question directly because I really don't know. But I didn't think I was going to coach my whole life. I thought I'd probably just go to college and go work for a company and start work. Just never thought about just wanting to play. And, when I stopped playing in the minor leagues, I went and got my real estate license and was thinking about what to do. And the regionals came on, and I just I miss that. I really want to be a part of that. And when somebody asks me about coaching or if they should coach, what I say to them is like, there's a few careers that nobody should convince you to do one way or the other.
Yes.
I think this is one of them. Like, there was, at that point in time, it was so deep inside of me and what I wanted to do that the things just felt right to be back coaching. I remember when I was able, Tommy Slater gave me a chance to come back to Auburn. Like, it was just like this unbelievable feeling of like, I get to go back kind of to do something that feels like what I'm supposed to be doing at the time. And a lot of times some guys that are starting out will say, should I coach? Should I not coach? Well, the best way to know that is, number one, just to start coaching, right?
Yes.
Because if you don't love it, it's not a lifetime
You will
contract. And
find out extremely fast if you don't like it.
decisions that you make, it's not a lifetime contract. Just go do it a year and then see what you want. But you think about like going in the military or coaching, or I'm sure a lot of things, it really has to come from within. And if a younger coach is out there saying, well, man, nobody's telling me I should do this, does that mean I shouldn't? No, nobody's telling you should do it, because a lot of times, in order to do anything, really worthwhile or in your purpose, it's got to come from inside of you. And I would probably think it's the same thing if you want to be a lawyer. Yes. Or a doctor. So many people had an experience in their life that made them want to do that, and it turns into more of a vocation rather than a job. And so I think for the young coaches, I say all that to say, follow your instincts, right? Like, if deep down inside everything's telling you this is what I want to do, try it. And and if you're trying to convince yourself that this is something that you should do, then maybe not. I know that there's a lot of coaches like Butch, or you look around at guys that are in these amazing places, they didn't start for where they were going to be down the road. And I'm sure you get that with all these wonderful coaches you talk to. They started because they just wanted to be out on the field, right? And they just wanted to, that was the most enjoyable thing that they could do that day. And so that would be one thing. And then I think the other thing would be, it's almost embarrassing to say, but as you get a little bit older, you really realize you're not dealing with players, you're dealing with people, right? And our job is to impact the person, right? And use baseball to do it. And that sounds simple, but I think it takes a little while to realize, like, the sooner we realize that
you're going to get the most out of your players doing that way now too. They are going to maximize their on-field performance by doing that away from the field with them. They will maximize their on-field performance.
And I just think naturally at 25 years old, well, let me just say this. I didn't see that the same way. Yeah. And then the more you're around him, you're like, man, we have a chance to be around this person right here. What can we do to make this person's life better? And that kind of, I think it makes it a little bit more fulfilling. And it ends up maybe not just being about the ball,
And you had some other good mentors too, Dean E. Hall, Chris Finwood. I mean, you had some really good people to guide you along on the early years on your path.
Yeah. I think there's two ways that you can really develop as a coach. And like I said, this is opinion. This doesn't mean it's right. And I certainly don't have the answers. One of the ways is to start coaching, right? That's one way, like figuring out your personality. But another way that's pretty important is to start learning from other coaches. And, being first job down here when Tommy Slater hired me, he's been a major league hitting coach and, had been a head coach. I mean, just awesome guy, awesome baseball guy. And the first, recruiting coordinator we had right there was Chris Finwood. And so, as a volunteer, got to work with him. Well, then he went and take the Western Kentucky job, and then Butch comes in and, get to kind of learn how they do it. And then, actually, I've coached high school for a couple of years. I don't think anybody could ever have a better high school coach than the high school coach I had. He still coaches. Got to go back and coach with him for a couple of years afterwards. And, he has impacted me more than you can imagine. And there's a lot of appreciation for that 14 to 18. I mean, my high school coach ignited a fire in me for baseball. That came from my high school coach. And so being impacted at a young age, and really, I think the best thing you could say about a coach is you love the game more when you were done than you did maybe when you started. So at all points in times, junior college coaches out recruiting, travel coaches, there's just so much out there to try to grow and benefit ourselves, right? I mean, that's your passion right now, what you're doing. And so, yeah, being able to work with some great guys, hey, just calling somebody up and saying, can I come watch your practice? What coach is going to say no, right? Like this amazing coach down the road.
Not in baseball.
That's won a bunch of games. Hey, can I just come, like maybe sit in on a meeting a little bit, watch practice or something? In college, we get to do that because we work at a few different stops early. Probably not as easy in high school, where you might just be working in a town and it's your deal, but there's a guy 30 minutes down the road that's won 500 games and, would say, yeah, sure. Come on, come on. So we definitely are who we are based on the people that have poured into us. And I've seen some of your story, and I know the people that you've been around. And I think that's why so many coaches want to keep learning, because they know how much the learning has impacted them up to a certain point.
Do you have a fail forward moment? Do you have something you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now is one of the best things that happened to you?
Yeah, I a couple, a lot of fails, in my life. I think we had a season in 2016 with a lot of older players. It was a good year. We had amazing players. And it's not super personal, so it's probably not opening up that much. But I just felt like at the end of the year that as their hitting coach, I didn't help them as much as I could. And really what it came from was they were 22, 23-year-old guys, and it's their career, right? So as a coach, you truly want it to be them, and maybe some of them transferred in and some of them, and I mean, 36 at this point in time. And it just said, man, this just didn't go the way. I don't feel like there were some guys here that we didn't help as much. And at that point in time, kind of sent me on a journey to try to figure out what the lines in the sand are. It's not like, hey, I didn't think I'd ever coach again, or it wasn't this life or death situation that some people deal with that's so much deeper than just a simple trivial coaching season. But it was more of like, this is unsustainable. And I think where it led me to is to try to boil coaching down into, when you're coaching a particular skill or when you're teaching guys, into the simplest form on, like, here's a few things that we won't negotiate. And then after that, the principle, these 2 or 3 principles are common with everybody. And then after that, from a style standpoint, guys can have whatever style they want, rather than not knowing what to kind of draw a line in the sand. Because as coaches, sometimes we know if something's probably going to work or not, but we want to try to help the player get there. So,
and you can't fight every battle. Like it takes too much out of you. Like you can't fight every battle.
So it's kind of it goes back to like college. We had a presentation class, and it was get their attention, tell them what you're going to tell them. Then it's tell them what you introduced them that you were going to tell them. And then it's tell them what you told them. And I would say throughout the course of the season, it's like, hey, here's what we're going to try to be. Here's what we're going to tell you. All right, now here's our principles, or here's the things for this particular thing. We're going to work on that. And we can make up drills if we want to work on that. Like, for example, if it's timing for a hitter, be on time. We could do 2-strike timing, breaking ball timing, fastball timing. But if be on time is a principle, we're going to talk about it all the time. And it kind of opened my eyes to, like, and I don't know if this resonates with any coach that's listening. We shouldn't think that the player should just follow us down a rabbit hole. Hey, come with me. Like, I know what I'm doing. Just follow me blind and I'll take you there. And so I think it's just that year of maybe just, man, and it's not been the only year that
Yeah, you
maybe
do it as
wasn't
long as you've done it. You're
what.
gonna have years like that where they're gut check years. They are, and you have to reevaluate sometimes and self reflect. That's part of growing as a person and as a coach. Like you're gonna have some tough years here and there.
And that was just so. Hey, now when a year starts, it's like here's what we believe in. Just because we believe in this doesn't mean it's more right than maybe another coach you had that believed in something else. But as a coach, our responsibility is for you to know what we believe.
Yes.
Right? Doesn't mean our responsibility is to tell you that that's the only thing to believe. It's just if you don't know what we believe, do you really know us?
Yep.
And then here's what we believe. Here's what we're going to focus on. And then you just focus on that. Right. And there's times for like, hey, this is kind of going haywire. Let's just kind of, this is in this bucket, but we're going to kind of make up a drill to fix this that's in this bucket. And then at the end, it's, hey, here's what we told you we were going to believe, and here's what we do. So I think it maybe led to not changing the tune, but more so going deep enough to figure out what you believe to where on day one, you can start to present what you believe.
Yep.
And then you're not switching on that path. And so it's not a super deep, like I said, some guys have had so much more.
No, but that's a valuable one because as a coach, you're going to go through that. I mean, and pulling yourself out and pulling your players out. It's a big key to continuing and having longevity on your coaching careers because you're going to have some years like that, and you got to figure out a way to pull yourself out and your players out of it.
Yeah, like you get to a point where you're like, okay, this isn't sustainable. We got into this to really just try to maximize everything with the player.
Yep.
And it's healthy to look back every year. And I think for most of us coaches in college, it's Christmas time, right? And then you got the convention that comes up and you got a chance to kind of think a little bit more on some things because that's our time where we might have 3 weeks kind of off, right?
Yep.
Of not too much going on where to your point, you're talking about wiring with, you got time and your brain can catch up,
Yep.
right? To all the stimulus from the year and sort through some things and do some self auditing, I guess.
What are some final thoughts? Or is there something I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, it's been great. You know, I think that hopefully all this stuff, you know, I know it's helped me. I've been listening to some podcasts while I've been on the bike, trying to find some things to grow. Thank you for everything that you've been doing. I'm accessible if somebody's ever listening and wants to reach out. I'm definitely accessible. Don't have all the answers, but would love to help. And looking forward to seeing you in January.
Hey, what last one? Your bike ride? Do you just get on and go, or what do you like when you get on there?
You know, I was out of shape and I was just trying to do intervals and sprints stuff.
You're not out of shape, by the way.
I'm not in good enough shape to do that. So I started doing it started with 15 minutes of continuous cardio 3 days a week, but it can go to more. Because sometimes you won't get on because you're like, I'm not going to go an hour. So what I've started doing, well, partly to also to just kind of get your personality a little bit and prepare is sometimes it'll be like walking and running. You know, normally it's lifting in our weight room a couple days a week and stuff. But for the cardio, it ends up probably being 2 days a week, just getting on a spin bike and just going for about 30 minutes and putting a podcast in. And
I needed the bike more than I needed. I'm not I'm terrible on the treadmill. It's just the bike. The bike was always much better for me.
Yeah. So now at 42, it's better on the joints too.
Yes. All right, Kyle, I appreciate it, man. This is awesome.
All right. Thanks so much.